Hello, everyone. When I arrived yesterday at the airport, the first thing that I saw was an advert for Ripple. And today, when I was running for my coffee, I bumped into an NFT gallery. Decentralization is here. We can't avoid it. It's coming from all different directions. So it makes me really happy that we can talk about it today next to other topics about other industries, food, medicine. Decentralized finance is something that we really need to start talking about and take it seriously. So to start our discussion, I have two general questions for my panelists, and then I'd like to ask them individual questions, and I hope that will be a vibrant discussion. So we have a great number of talented, curious people here. Some of them might have heard about decentralized finance, some of them might have not. But how would you interest everyone into jumping into this space? How would you invite people into decentralized finance? What is compelling about it, and why do we need to care about it? Maybe let's start with Helen.
Thank you. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I think that's a wonderful question. I think even before talking about DeFi, maybe we should talk about why blockchain. What's the real value blockchain can create to the society? So I think the fundamental is, if we look at post-Second World War, human development, with the second industrial revolution, countries in Asia, they were able to capture it. They created millions of jobs. That was Asia's economic transformation. And what happened in the third industrial revolution, which is internet-based, which has happened in the past 20, 30 years? If you look at globally, 1% of the population is actually getting 99% of the global wealth. The globe, that didn't become a better place. That actually was not the original intention of internet. The original intention of internet is free transfer of information. 30 years ago, even sitting here in London, we want to know what's going on in Poland. We don't know, We need to rely on a newspaper, on a third intermediary, and then today is different. So that's actually what internet achieved. It achieved free transfer of information, but the distribution model is not correct, because there was certain organization and certain individual using the technology has been benefited during the past 30, 20 years. That has not been equally distributed. So I think what blockchain is really trying to solve for the society in the coming 20 years is free transfer of values. That is the fundamental. That is why today, even we are talking about crypto, DeFi, NFT, it is all applications, based on blockchain. And I think that is the bigger evolution human history going to look at. So that is something I think is even the bigger context. And the other thing, I think we need to understand the timing. I think today, if we're looking at today's financial situation, people talking about we're getting into recession. Actually, financial recession is very easy to quantify. I think probably personally, we should even talking about geopolitical recession right now, because geopolitical recession actually is not talking about 1 year or 5 years. Normally, actually could last for a decade. If you look at what's going on, happened in Russia, Ukraine, even in China, I think there's a geopolitical recession is coming in our generation, which is facing. So we also have to reflect, if that's the case, what's actually underlying it? I think if we're thinking about that along those lines of a good model of governance, since Aristotle into today, I think human has been searching for a good model of governance. But actually, if you look at the history, whether it's a communist, capitalism, or socialism, they all started with a very good intention. What really went wrong is human nature. Because while a group of people getting a lot of power, things went wrong. That's what has been happened in our human history. I think we're also into a year, human need to find a certain mechanism to work with us, to balance the certain things in human nature. This is why also blockchain is going to play a very important role. The fundamental of blockchain, which is transparency, trackable, is actually going to shape in terms of governance. This is going to be more impact into profit distribution and also governance. That's the bigger context. I think with that underlying, then we talk about DeFi, NFT, we can actually have a bigger understanding what's going to really create values. Maybe I will start there and then let my other panelists to continue.
Okay. Antoni, so why should people care about DeFi given the context that Helen has just drawn?
Right, I guess the ideal example here would be inclusion. So if we, for instance, look at the current world of finance from, I don't know, the US perspective, US citizens and companies cannot really get involved in any transactions with Iran because of the OFAC sanctions list, for as an example. And then it's not, you know, your single Iranian citizen is not at fault here. And with DeFi and ensuring more transparency that is sort of pre-programmed, we can make sure that this opens up a new world of possibilities for people outside of the Western markets, I would say.
All right, thanks. We'll get to that point a bit later, but now if Leandro could continue.
Sure, thanks. And thanks for having me here. I go through the evolution side of it, right? The analogy I always have is the email, right? So everybody here, I'm sure you guys don't send letters the same way you used to do. Everybody sends email and it's pretty, you know, often. Well, why don't you think the way we send money, for example, should be the same way, right? This is gonna change, and this is changing, right? Why do I have to, if you see countries, big countries like here or the US, the settlement is like 3, 4, 5 business days to settle money. That means you can have your money in your account, but it's still a backstage, someone processing this. And this is cost, right? You send money to someone, and there is a cost in that to settle this money. So when you go to the DeFi side, and you think about, I can send an email to all of you and you get this real time, why not settlement should be real time? Why do we need to have the system that we have now? So to me, it's an evolution of a digital transformation, right? We see in our daily-based lives, and that is not going to be different with the DeFi. So it's happening. So for everybody here, start a career or starting understanding this better, you have to take into account that that's going to happen. This is the evolution. This is the consequence of what we've seen in the world in terms of digital transformation.
Okay, so we have the different ways that value is being transferred, the new ways of value transfer. We have financial inclusion. We have speed and simplification of the exchange of value. But there are also, as we know it, there are challenges and there are even attacks on DeFi. It's being criticized. And in fact, last year in the BIS report, it was said that DeFi has an unescapable need for centralization and that it will not be possible to build a decentralized financial system at scale in the future. How would you address these concerns, attacks, and are there any other challenges that you see we have to be talking about, we have to address to keep this going?
Sure. I think there's 3 very important elements to it, which are education, regulation, and successful examples. I'm going to start with education. I think today, very few people actually really understand, even NFT. Everybody talking about NFTs, but people even mixing actually NFT mechanism and the individual NFT. So personally, I'm very bullish about the mechanism of NFT, but I'm very bearish about some of the NFT existed today. This is like talking about London Stock Exchange 100 years ago. That model has been lasted for 100 years. The model is right. But people has been trying to challenge London Stock Exchange, saying there's a few stocks, the price is dropping, and then the mechanism doesn't work. So that's actually, there is a misunderstanding, they don't understand actually the fundamental about the mechanism and also individual product based on this mechanism. So I think this applies on a lot of things on NFT, DeFi, and the crypto world. So there need actually a lot of education. Today there's so much FOMOs. People went into this place because they feel a friend of mine actually have a 10x within 3 months. I have to invest my money into it. But the moment you put your money, probably you're going to drop 50%. But if you even looking at BTC's price, yes, it has been halved, compared with 3 months ago. But if you look at it, actually, with 5 years ago, it has a huge investment return. So it's really depending. When we're talking about returns, we have to understand we're talking about investment. Investment, there's risk appetite. Every return is associated with your risk. You need to understand the risk before you make investment. So today, I think people too much following on the FOMO without really understanding the substance. And then this is one issue. This is why I think for Binance, particularly on the charity side, we're very passionate about doing more education. We've been working with various universities in Europe, trying to having more mass education. Because I think without the underlying layers, it's very difficult, when you talk challenging people with questions, you're not on the same tone even. So that's number one. Number two is regulation. I think today, regulation in most of the sectors, regulation is always behind innovation. So, and then today even talking about blockchain, crypto, this is, if I went to Imperial University and I asked the student to raise their hand, how much of them actually have a crypto wallet? 80% of the people raise their hand. But if I'm asking the same question in the city of London, I think the percentage is going to be far more less. It's a different generation thing. And today, if we're looking at actually the generation for the regulators, they're not the newer generation. So I think there's understanding for them to understanding the technology. But I think for major player like Binance, we really want to bridge that gap with the regulator. We should embrace regulation because the more regulation is better for the concrete players, because the small players, they're going to move out. And then they're going, because the whole industry still, I think the global penetration is very low. We need to actually increase the global penetration. That's why regulation is going to be a good thing to the industry. Another thing is about successful example. I like to build actually what Andrew just said. I think today, eventually, we have to think whether these things create values and what exactly the value. I want to give 2 concrete examples. Number one, on charity. Today, we're in London. Let's say we want to donate £100 to a poor girl in Nigeria. Have a wild guess. When you give your £100 to a charity, how much of your £100 will end in the hand of that poor girl? Give me a guess. From the audience? 12, okay. Any other figures? But if 12, would you still donate £100? That's the question, right? Today, on average, I think for charity, we're talking about 25%. A lot of people don't even know. When you thought you give £100 of your earning, actually you thought to help somebody, actually only 25% of that. And actually locally, a lot of administration costs in the middle. Sometimes in order to donate £100,000, some charity have to pay £200,000 for big four, auditors to audit the book. There's a lot of administration costs. And this is why I think we have to understand technology can actually create a lot of value, making the efficiency and more effective. We started running a charity project in Africa 4 years ago. We were able to achieve, out of your £100, we were trying to support the food for the children in Uganda. 93% of your £100 turned out to be the food on their plate. The other 7% are the local administration costs. We're not just saying it, and we don't need auditor. Because of blockchain, everything's trackable, everything's transparent. We're the only charity charging 0 administration fee because we don't have to, because everything can be done on the technology side. So this is the real value when I'm talking about free transfer of values, for blockchain we need to leverage. It has really values compared with the evolution we're actually going to change. The same thing with NFT. Why I'm so bullish about the NFT mechanism. Today, if I'm talking about why I set up the NFT platform for Binance, one thing really touched my heart is we're having this Latin American artist, 25 years old. He used to struggle to feed himself, and somehow he learned how to make NFT. He started to selling things on our platform. At the beginning, $10, $50, $100, and then actually up to like $20,000 for each of his piece. He actually got very rich. The point is, when this young guy, he become rich, he didn't go to buy a car or buy a house. He set up a local school. He's teaching more people on the street, you know, how to make NFT, using NFT to make art. Because when previously, today, if within the traditional model, if I want to become an artist, I need to find an art gallery and make sure they appreciate me and commit 50% of my 10 years earning to them, and they start to exhibit all my art around the globe in order to make myself famous. The entry barrier is huge, but actually with NFT, anybody, even like what I mentioned, the street artists, they don't need art galleries anymore. They can actually suddenly open the audience globally. People can price their piece. And then this is I think is getting rid of a lot of the intermediary to ensure, going back to what I said, the free transfer of values. This is why technology is really lowering the entry barrier, and this is why the value of the mechanism. So this is what I think the whole industry need to create more successful examples like this, adding real values to the society in order to push back the bigger penetration rate and also confidence and trust to the industry.
Okay, so we have education, regulation, use cases. Is there anything else that we could throw at the challenges that are being, highlighted for DeFi going forward?
Right. So I think that pretty much sums it up, honestly. But a good example as to why DeFi or blockchain or anything that has to do with an online transfer of value is being under attack from time to time is that, for instance, when we've had email, like back in the early 90s, like we used to be very happy and excited about sending in, a single message to a family member or a colleague. And in return, we received 10 spam messages. So this is, to some extent, what's happening to the industry right now, which is you've got one very valuable project, as an example, and then you've got 10 scams that follow up and try to siphon off some of the popularity and the community of that very successful project or app. And I guess this is, to some extent, a question of maturity of the industry, education of the broader public, as well as the entire industry learning where we can utilize the value of this technology and in which verticals, because this is also still very much under debate.
Okay, Leandro, anything you want to add?
Very quickly, we always talk about the adoption of the technology from an individual perspective, us, right? Transacting, but there is also the adoption of the financial institutions and the systems in general to the DeFi as well, right? To the new technology, regulation and education, all of it help with that a lot, but also the system would have to change, and the financial institutions would have to change their way of thinking as well. For the ones who don't know much about the DeFi, the main idea is to not have a centralized single player there, right, that pass everything for this and go to the other side, but you can interact more peer-to-peer perspective, and that's it's not only for individuals again, but the whole ecosystem would have to adopt to that. So adoption for me, it's as any other new technology, is extremely important, and adoption from all layers of the society, and all kind of companies, government, and all of it. And it goes around all of it, education, regulation, and so on.
So I want to touch upon that a little bit, and a question to you, Leandro. So many people, their first experience with cryptocurrency and the DeFi world is through investment, and the sentiment there is it allows you to get rich quickly. So not many people, if I may, associate crypto with a currency as an instrument that we use for payments, for everyday payments. So if indeed right now we're in this realm of crypto being used for investment. What is the role of cryptocurrency now, and what should it be?
That's a great question. Yeah, everybody, you know, when I talk about work with blockchain, people ask me, should I buy Bitcoin? I say, I don't know. You know, like, well, what am I going to do? What
No financial advice here, no.
Yeah, no, not at all. But what is the benefits of doing this? There are, even if you go to the perspective of a central bank, there's something called CBDC, right? Central bank digital currency. It's really the government or the central banks around the world issuing digital currency. Nowadays, for each transaction we do, even if a digital one, you have a paper note that backs this up, right? Because the central banks are issuing the currency. Just imagine the world where the central bank already issuing the digital currency. There is no more paper directly. It's the digital currency one. And then we start to transaction peer-to-peer. That goes a lot of things away, put KYCs or putting like an idea of having a bank account to do this. So crypto can be a way to also financial inclusion and to make it be cheaper to transact, right? Even if they want to think about my country has a lot in the digital already, so I can send digital money, I can swipe my card. But is that as like a micro payment one? Can you see this in all of cents of your life? The answer probably no, right? You see in a big transaction, you see if you know, go out for dinner, but think about, you know, the micro payment and think about what you have in your background that guarantees that to you. So that crypto can help with this. Is the distributed way that you don't need necessarily these institutions all over the place. And then you think about this as a good start rather than just think, oh, I'm buying crypto because I want to get rich, right? Mm-hmm. So, and think about that, okay, now I know why it's so important to have a digital currency, because that would bring effectiveness to the whole system. And that would include people that not necessarily can be part of it. It has to do with, you know, paper notes and money, cash, every single day of their lives. So that brings, in the emerging market, in the emerging countries, you know, it's a reality nowadays. I've been talking to central banks in Africa, Latin America, Asia, Europe. UK just passed, you know, a bill about that recently. They are interested in that because it's more effective, can be safe, and can be regulated if the government you know, jumps in and the financial institutions come together. So they're gonna start to see crypto not from an investment side, or Bitcoin is a threat to my local currency, to the pound, or a threat to the dollar or to the euro, but it's gonna start to be actually a tool, a solution to the problems that they're facing nowadays.
Mm-hmm. That's true, and it's probably different from the perspective of the market you're looking at, right? We have a very different perspective how we see things in Europe. So it's good that you're bringing up the you know, the micropayment element in it, because essentially and fundamentally that was supposed to be the purpose, right, of digital currency. So jumping a little bit into the technical aspects without being too technical, I have a question to Antoni. DeFi is driven by programmability. Smart contracts are at the heart of DeFi and decentralization in general. The whole point of DeFi is that we take away the trust away from intermediaries and we build a trustless system. But isn't it the case that we are now shifting the trust that we've had in traditional intermediaries and putting it into smart contracts? Have we just shifted perspectives, but the trust element is still essential?
Right. So there's this, you know, trust but verify saying, and I think this is a good example of how to approach thinking about smart contracts as those independent actors somewhere in the DeFi space or blockchain space. So when you decide to offset this trust element from a centralized entity to code, really, which is written by a group of developers from Germany, from China, from wherever else, these smart contracts are open source, so you can take a look at the code, you can read it. And obviously, if you don't have a coding or developer background, it's not going to be very useful to you. However, you can then rely on your friends or other companies or other auditing firms that just go through this very code and give it somewhat of a seal of approval that it is, in fact, a tool that does what it promised to do. Which one can argue that to some extent doesn't differ much from centralized entities also being audited by the very same third parties. So that's to some extent where the education component kicks back in, which is ultimately, you've got kids learning how to code when they are 8, 7, 9 years old, and it's just happening. And reading code is, we believe, is going to become like your second or third language at some point, which ultimately means that you can simply verify the actions within that very smart contract, which you cannot do
I have to jump in and ask you, I have to ask this, who should be writing the smart contracts?
Well, the beautiful thing is that anyone can.
Okay.
Which means that, who should be writing them? Anybody who has a good intent and coding skills.
Okay. I think there is an interesting conversation to be had about this after the panel. I have some additional questions, but I'd like now to ask Helen. We all have mentioned DeFi having this important social function about inclusivity and opening up the opportunities to people who don't have access to a traditional financial system. Can you tell us a little bit more about the foundation and what work do you do and what is the purpose of it and how does blockchain fit into all that?
Sure. I think blockchain is complementary to the existing financial system. It's not just we say it's going to disrupt. It's actually a great complementary. Because today, there's still a significant population globally that not even existed in the existing financial system. Why? Because the existing financial system is actually very expensive. So, but then, for example, we're talking about remittances. Today, if let's say if let's say a Nigerian father working in the UK want to send actually his earning back to the girls back in Nigeria, you know what he has to do? Has to go to Western Union, probably pay 15% of that, and probably that poor girl don't have actually Western Union in the village she's living. She have to rely on another broker go into actually the city of Nigeria and then take this whole process. Actually, I guess probably 30% of the money the father has earned, just use £100, will lost in the middle. And also what? Probably the whole process, like Andrew said, might take several days, even week, to complete that transfer. So this is the problem, today under the existing system, there's no free transfer of values. Why? Because the data actually are not even existed in current financial system. They were not able to actually doing the immediately point-to-point transfer. This is why blockchain can make it so effective, because it's cheaper, faster, and quicker. When we were running the Landfall project project in Uganda, one thing we want to pilot, because ultimately, if the whole world were trying to achieve the free transfer values, that means what? The same thing has been achieved on the internet. There need to be a fundamental infrastructure. You and me, we need to have internet. Everybody have internet and everybody can start writing on things. Then there's actually the free transfer of information. The same thing have to achieve, for the free transfer values. Everybody have to be existed on this blockchain. You need to have an ID. So when we were demonstrating the free ledger project in Uganda, we want to demonstrate actually it's so quick and so cost effective and it's so cheap to actually empower everybody a crypto ID to make sure that person is existed, on the blockchain. This is like 100 years ago, we're building island, we're building road, we're building internet highway. People have to build the blockchain infrastructure, make sure everybody, you're going to have a crypto ID. And then you started existed. And then you started doing transfer of values from any given point. Then that's actually the fundamental of the free transfer of information. So today, financial system not able to do that because it's so costly. And then because I actually also set up the Binance fiat business even from 3 years ago. Now understanding how the fundamental, the payment industry, how many layers, the cost going to be involved. This is the question. This is why I think we're in a time blockchain is going to actually add a lot of values because it's definitely going to be far more cheaper, far more quicker. And then to make adopting this technology. This is the fundamental point. But I think the second point you just asked, Antoni, is very valid. I think today, still technology looking for applications. It's equivalent like 20 years back. If you ask me, what internet can do. Think about 20 years ago, if any three of us talking about iPhone, you can actually using internet to see somebody thousands miles away. You were thinking, what's going on? What are you talking about? That's exactly the same thing. I think today probably is what we are experiencing, some of the real application of blockchain probably is not there yet. What we are seeing now is still the early, the early application, there will be far more advancement. That's why we need entrepreneurs. And then talking about the coding, I think today is still rubbish in, rubbish out. We have to say there's so much rug pull project because this is why education is so important. How can you expect a normal average person, even myself, understand the coding? I don't understand. But then you need to do more work in this new society. In the past, if you want to invest in investment product, you go to your financial advisor. Clearly, you pay a fee, and then you pay for that service. Today, you are saying, I'm not using my financial advisor. It's decentralized, but you have to do certain work yourself. You have to go into the community. There's a lot of community. There's a lot of, people commenting. You need to do your own research. I think eventually, it's about a choice, people want to have. Some people just say, I just can't be bothered to do this. Then it's going back using the broker model, you're getting more trust, but you pay for the service. Or some people say, I'm willing to take the effort to do my own research and I get the economic out of it. And there's a system. So I think what the world is going to provide to us is choice. And then it's also important for the users to understand you do have a choice. And then how you want to distributed in this new mechanism is up to you. So I think this is all about talking about evolution or revolution whatsoever. I think this technology is going to offer more choice to our human history.
All right, thank you so much. We unfortunately have to finish now. I've been prompted to end the discussion, but there are so many questions that are probably that you want to ask and that I would like to ask. So feel free to continue this discussion after the panel. Approach us in the coffee breaks, and let's continue this discussion. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.